This is the Recruit the Employer podcast, and you're listening to episode 94, How to Find a Mentor with Kelsey Chapman. Welcome to the Recruit the Employer podcast, a show for the ambitious, action-oriented career woman who wants to live out her purpose, rise to the top of her industry, and be seen as a leader at work. In 30 minutes or less, we'll walk you through the latest strategies to land your dream job, blast through imposter syndrome, and make the money you deserve. I'm your host, Jenna Viviano, ex-Wall Streeter turned career coach and founder of Recruit the Employer. But more importantly, I'm on a mission to help you fall in love with your work again. So grab a glass of wine, get ready to be coached, and tune in to your weekly boost of career confidence. Hi, friends, and welcome back to another episode of the Recruit the Employer podcast. I am excited to bring to you today a really fun conversation that I got to have with Kelsey Chapman, who just launched a book. We talk about the book. We talk about mentorship, how to find a mentor physically at work, but also just in life. We talked about how women that are older are so wise, which is one of my favorite things. I'm thinking about even bringing on one of my mentors to come and just chat on the podcast. She's a woman who has a wealth of wisdom. And so it was just a really fun conversation. If you've ever wondered practically how to ask somebody to be your mentor, we talk about that. If you are wondering, do I even need a mentor? We also talk about that. So this is a really great conversation. And without further ado, here's Kelsey Chapman. Hello, friends, and welcome to another episode of the Recruit the Employer podcast. I have a very special guest with me here today, Kelsey, who's going to be talking with us a little bit about mentorship. So Kelsey, thank you so much for joining Recruit the Employer.
It is so fun to be here with you today.
Awesome. Well, why don't you share with our audience a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, so I'm Kelsey, and I am an author, a creative, an online educator, and that is a bit about what I spend my day-to-day doing. But aside from what I do in the context of who I am, I'm a friend, I'm a girl's girl, I'm a lifelong learner, I'm a traveler. And so I'm trying these days to add in identifiers that aren't just work-oriented, because that can be a challenge for me. Work is my hobby. But, that's a little bit about me. I love people. I love learning from people. And then I love sharing everything I know with those people too. And so that's a little bit about what lights me up.
I love that. Now, you have a very vibrant social media presence. So I love to ask this question. What is one thing someone wouldn't know about you? Let's say they've been following you forever and they're like, I have followed her forever. I know all the things about her current life. Like, what's one thing someone wouldn't know from looking at your social media?
Well, I will say I went to college to be as a global studies major with a double major in Spanish and almost a minor in French. And I totally thought I would spend my career living overseas doing foreign aid work, or this is hilarious now to think back, but my advisor would be like, you could be a diplomat with this degree. What he was conveniently leaving out was probably the additional 10 years of school I would need.
Yeah.
So he kind of left me hung out to dry on that one. Like, I could not be a diplomat with my global studies liberal arts degree, but that's a little bit about me that you might not know from a social media.
I love it. So you can speak a couple of languages then?
Well, speak would be a
little bit of a stretch.
Generous term.
I love. Now, did you live overseas at all?
I've only spent like 3 month stretches overseas. I've spent 3 months in Mozambique, 3 months in Peru. I loved it. I think living in the city might be more ideal for me. I was a little bored out in rural areas, which both instances were very rural, but I wish I wouldn't have rushed through those seasons, because now I so fondly look back at them.
Yeah, I actually spent a month in my career. I interned abroad, actually. So I interned in London for about a month. I worked in investment banking over there, and I was like Canary Wharf. I was did the whole like London, England thing. But you know what? I probably didn't appreciate it enough. Like, I look back on that, and I think because I was just like, you're such a vulnerable age, like early in your life, right? And you just don't know so many things. And I just felt like I look back on that and I was like, I was really insecure. I really didn't know what I was doing. I had no friends there. Like, it probably was not super fun in the moment, but looking back, I wish I would have made it more fun.
Oh my gosh, same. And you travel so differently when you're young.
Totally.
Like you kind of learn your preferences and you get more comfortable with what you like to spend your time on and what you don't. And you don't do the things that you think you should do, quote unquote, a little further down the road, and you spend your time maximizing it a little bit better. And so I wish I would have known all the things I know now about traveling, but here we are. It was
Here
fun.
we are. And so you have been on a new adventure. Speaking about adventures, right? You have written a book recently, and this is kind of why I wanted to bring you on. And it's about a subject that I actually really, really care about and feel like not enough people talk about. And your book title is What They Taught Me. So recognizing the mentors who will take you from dream to done. And I love that. So talk to me a little bit about why mentors. Like why are you passionate about this subject?
Oh, man. Well, as I said, I love to learn something and then share it with everyone I know. And I think that's kind of a core part of who I am because I have these women invest in me and pass along everything they know. And I like to use the illustration that mentors really help you shortcut the distance. If they've pioneered something, if they've walked through something and can tell me the most efficient, fast road to get to where I want to go, I want to take that. I would prefer to not take the twisting, winding, painful 5-year plan if there's a 1-year option on something. And so I have had these women who have passed along what they know, what they had to figure out the long, hard way. And it made my process so much more seamless. Now, there's certain areas of life that I have to figure out the long, hard way. But then I can pay that forward to someone a few steps behind me and share everything I know with them. And so I really believe we'll go further together. And I am forever grateful for the women who have stepped into my life and shared what they know. And so I've kind of made it my life work to do that as well.
Yeah, I have had mentors in all areas of my life. Like I had mentors in my professional life, which is the more obvious one, right? And then like in my Christian walk, I have had mentors who have mentored me. And I always joke that my first mentor, she like sat with me over many a tear-stained salad, like me just like bawling outside of the New York Stock Exchange when I worked there. And I would go across the street, we'd grab a salad, and I was just telling her about all my woes and crying and all the things. And then when I moved to Nashville, I also got a mentor, a spiritual mentor. And I've had professional ones over my life. So when you think of a mentor, like how would you almost define it? Or do you look at it in one silo? Like, do you think of mentorship in a professional sense or in a personal sense or both?
Oh, I tend to silo them, although sometimes there's some crossover.
Of course.
Depending on the personality of the person. So for me, as a mentor, if the woman that I'm mentoring needs business guidance, but is also aligned in our faith values, I might pull in a little more spiritual application to my business guidance with her. Whereas if I'm mentoring someone that doesn't share the same faith as me, then I'll leave that out. I won't blend them together. And so I think it can certainly vary from mentor to mentor, but I tend to, expect one thing from my mentor. I'm not trying to ask them to complete me or to fulfill every need I have in life or to be on the same page as me on everything, because I'm not even on the same page of every single thing in the world with my husband. Like, how could I expect that from a mentor? And so I tend to go to a mentor with one specific need. I need you to be my business mentor, or I'd like for you to be my spiritual mentor, or I'd like for you to show me how to figure out this marriage thing. And we're kind of disconnected. And I'd like for you to tell me how you walked through a disconnected season and reconnected. And so sometimes that bleeds into a few different areas they're mentoring me in, but I tend to at least approach it with one goal in mind and trust that, they're not going to be crushing it in every single area because no one is, but they're crushing it in the area I want to learn in. So I'm going to ask them for advice.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting concept. So when women are realizing, gosh, that sounds really amazing, I need a mentor. I get this question a lot from people, mostly on LinkedIn, because I live mostly on LinkedIn. You're, I think, mostly on Instagram. But I get that question a lot, like, how do I actually find a mentor? How do you recommend women go and find mentors for their life, whether it's professionally or personally?
Yeah. And I think, we can touch on professionally first, and then I'll also share my personal experiences, but it varies from role to role. So if you're in corporate, you might have a professional matching system with a mentor in your organization, or it might be joining the Young Entrepreneurs Association of your city, or getting involved with the startup incubator, cocktail nights that's once a month, going and networking in appropriate spaces to find that like-minded person. Whereas more of a mentor in the personal department might look like, oh, I joined a community group and she's a part of it, or we volunteer at the same place, or I got involved in my church and there's this older woman, or there's a neighbor down the street. Like life mentors tend to be a little looser in the pool that you find them in. You're coloring outside the lines there. You don't really have lines. You just have to look at the areas that you're involved in and maybe look around you and find someone who you admire in those groups. If you don't have that, you might need to put yourself out there and get involved in your community in whatever way feels the truest for you, whether, again, that's volunteering somewhere, getting involved at your church, whatever makes the most sense for your life. And then again, I'd say back over to the professional side, sometimes it means paying someone too, depending on the industry you're in. A lot of the times in corporate, you're not paying someone, but in online business, you are paying someone. And so it just depends on your industry, but kind of reading the room, quote unquote, for the area you're looking and taking the step to put yourself out there appropriately.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, why do you feel like people are scared to put themselves out there? Because this is a huge part of finding a mentor, or just like networking in general. Like, I look at my whole life as a big networking experiment. I make that joke all the time. I love networking. And when I think of networking, I don't think of it as this like sleazy, uncomfortable activity. It's really about building relationships, whether they are professional or personal. So I kind of mesh them together. But one of the big things that I have with people who are like, Jenna, I hate networking because I hate putting myself out there. Why do you feel like women are scared to put themselves out there?
Yeah, I will definitely say finding a mentor or finding a new friend can be
a new friend, yeah.
awkward as dating. I mean, I thought when I found my husband, I was done dating forever. Wrong. I moved to a new city, had to date to find friends, had to date to find mentors. And it's like, you go on a quote unquote date with a new friend or a new mentor, and you're like, not a match. This is not my type of girl, not my type of guy, and so it can feel uncomfortable. I think when you are building human connection in any format, there's no way you can get through life untouched by pain or discomfort. And so embracing that and just saying, hey, I'm going to put myself out there. Sometimes it's going to go sideways or be awkward or like a waste of your hour, but the reward is worth that risk. You're going to have some duds, but I think the reward is worth it.
I love that. So you talked a little bit earlier, and I kind of want to go back to us on that. You mentioned about paid mentorship. And I think it's interesting because you mentioned in corporate, you usually don't. And it's one of those things that I've actually been trying to reframe people's brains around, that you actually you should have unpaid mentors, and you should have paid mentors that are like third party. They're not emotionally invested in what's going on, but they are more of those practical thinkers. They've done it before you've done it. They can help you get to the next level in your career. And my corporate women, they just don't think like my entrepreneurial women. Like you and me, we're used to paying for mentorship. We're used to paying for, and we know that in order to get ahead, we have to invest in ourselves first, because that's the best return on investment. So can you talk a little bit about when is the right time to invest financially, whether you're in a corporate environment and you're like, crap, I can't figure out how to change jobs, or you're launching your own business, or whatever it may look like? How do you determine now is the right time to pay for somebody?
I think when you start to realize that your needs are beyond the scope of someone giving away their time for free. So for instance, my paid mentors, I don't expect them, when they do this for their job and I want their expertise and input, to give me their time for free, because if they did that for the 12 other women who wanted their attention each day, they would be working around the clock for free, giving their sage wisdom away while also parenting, doing their normal life. Like it's just not, I can't expect that they can give that time block away for them to give me their full attention, for them to be focused, for them to give me their strategy. Like it's just not realistic. And so maybe you have a mentor that you meet for once a quarter. That's like your corporate paired mentor. And that probably has the parameters of what's appropriate to ask them. You're probably not talking to them outside of that lunch date you meet for. And you want someone with a little more frequent input. You want their unbiased opinion on your career path. You want them to give you tough love. You want them to be not emotionally attached to what you're working on. That might be a good time to pay for someone. Yeah. And really, you're just paying to block off their schedule so that you have their undiluted time. And again, when you think of it that way of like, oh, it doesn't dampen the relationship or make it any less connected to pay them. Sometimes I think we're hesitant to pay a mentor because it doesn't feel relational. It feels transactional, but no, it's just honoring their time so that they can give you their full attention. And I will pay for that all day long.
Right,
It's
totally.
every time I have invested in that, it's made my money back,
Yeah. And I think that is 100% true. And I think it's also, we talk a lot about women supporting women. That's one way that if you're going to find a way for women to support women, support them financially, because that's going to have a ripple effect in their communities, for their families. Like, that's just proven statistically that when women are paid well, that's going to reinvest positively back into the economy, back into their families, and just be better for the world. So, I mean, I'm a personal believer of like, absolutely, I pay women and men, but like I pay women, of course, I'm going to pay somebody for their time.
Yes, exactly. And again, it can feel counterintuitive because mentorship feels so personal. Why would you pay someone? But you're just paying so that you can really have their eyeballs on something that's so personal to you. You want someone to care about it as much as you care about it. But someone who's doing that for free might not when it's your career path. They have no skin in the game. But when you're paying them, you have a right to ask for their attention in a little more measured format. They have skin in the game when you're paying them for their advice.
Yeah. And I also think that it makes you more invested in the process. This is what I tell people all the time. When you pay attention. I have clients that paid $97 for a product and clients that have paid $5,000. I can 100% affirm that people who paid $5,000 for a service ended up being way more invested in their own success. And I was also way more invested in their success because they were really investing their time and energy. Now, I'm not telling everybody you need to pay whatever or invest that amount, but I do think it is important to reframe how you think about mentorship outside of what's maybe perhaps given to you in your organization, or if you're realizing like, hey, I really need to level up my mentorship in my life.
Totally. I 100% agree.
I love that. Now, when we're talking about mentors, what type of characteristics do you look for? Now, I know everyone probably has a different opinion on this, but what's your thoughts?
Yeah, for me, when I'm looking for a career mentor, I'm looking for someone whose personal life also reflects my values.
That's good.
So maybe they're crushing it in their career, but then you get up close and personal and you're like, yeah, they're sacrificing their whole personal life to crush it in their career. And I don't want that. Like, I don't want to martyr my personal life on the altar of success. And so I've done that. I have done the 12-hour work days. I've paid my dues. I'm not talking about not paying your dues, but at some point you've got to figure out a work-life balance, or like, why are you doing this? And so I think for me, I love the most strategic thinkers. Like, I love learning strategy all day long, but if that strategy is not going to yield a personal life I want, then no, thank you. Like, I'm just going to have to move on to another strategy. So the women I have invested the most in financially also have a life they've built that, they have multi-six-figure businesses, but they have a marriage that they're connected in. They have time to date if they're single. They have kids that they're able to go to their soccer game and not working every hour of the day. And so for me, a lot of it comes down to values. That's a huge one for me.
And I think if you're listening to this and you're thinking, gosh, I don't even know my values, like, I don't know what is important to me, that should be an opportunity for you to sit down and journal through, like, what are the things that are most important to me and what am I looking for in my own life? That's going to help you when you're looking out into your community or in your workspace to see like, oh, that person, they have something that I want and this is the reason why, and I'm going to pursue them potentially.
Absolutely. And I think too, if you don't know your values, this is the same for expectations. You can think back to a time where you felt totally out of alignment, totally dry and empty, and think, what was I missing? What did I yearn for? That's your value right there.
Yeah.
I do the same thing with expectations. Like, sometimes you don't know what your expectations are until they're missed. I thought I had no expectations for a mentor until I was disappointed. And it's like, oh, that highlights an expectation.
Yeah. I think we don't talk about that enough too. Or like the same thing happens in the job, right? You're in a job and you're like, oh, I didn't realize that that's going to fail my expectations until you're going through it. And you're like, crap, I don't like this.
Totally.
It happens. It happens all the time. So it's really about that value system, getting back to the core and just understand. We talk about this a lot on this podcast about understanding what's most important to you is going to help you make more strategic career choices over the long haul. And the same thing holds true with your mentorship and the people that are investing in your professional journey, 100%. Hi there, friends. Jenna here again. Let me guess. If you're listening to this podcast, you're probably not looking for any job. You're looking for the right job. And the right job is not at your current company. You're tired of feeling underpaid, overworked, and like your career is in the hands of the employer. You're ready to make some moves, but you're overwhelmed by all of the options, don't know how to sell yourself, and have a nagging feeling that your lack of confidence is keeping you from success. Not to mention negotiating the amount you're worth. If this sounds like you and you're a mid to senior level career woman who makes over $100,000, we have the 5-step solution just for you. Our signature program, Recruit the Employer, is designed to help women leaders get clarity on what they want to do, market to their dream jobs, and negotiate thousands more. Using a personal branded approach, we equip you with the tools to sell yourself in a non-sleazy way, think like a C-suite leader, and ultimately take back control of your career. To apply, head on over to recruittheemployer.com/call. Over the course of 6 months, you'll network with other female leaders at similar stages, learn how to double your salary, and solidify your career story. Oh, and I almost forgot to mention, that dreaded resume and LinkedIn profile? Yeah, we do that for you. Because of the intimate nature of this program and limited spots, we're really very selective about who we invite into the program. To see if you'd be a good fit, again, head on over to recruittheemployer.com/call to apply today. So, okay, let's say that you found someone, you're like, okay, here's my values. I'm looking out and I can see that's the person that I actually want to target. How do you actually ask somebody to be your mentor without being weird? Because I get this question all the time. Jenna, I want someone to be my mentor. Do I ask them to be my mentor? What do I say so that it's not awkward?
I know. It literally, I feel like a stage 5 clinger and a weirdo every time.
Yes.
Like a stalker. And then it's like, I just want the life you live. And you're like, oh, that felt weird saying that. I didn't mean it like that. You know?
Yeah.
So I totally acknowledge that it is uncomfortable to put yourself out there and to ask. I will say, if it's more of a life mentor, I would ask to take them to dinner or coffee or read the room. If they're a mom with toddlers, they're not going to coffee at 10 a.m. on a Tuesday. Ask them to come help them fold laundry, or that acknowledge life is crazy for them at the moment, but you'd love to come over during nap time and help with some chores and just talk with them as you do it. Because I've had conversations this week, even with people who started as my mentor when they were single, but now they're very much in a kids under 5 season. And what it looks like for her to invest in anyone right now is come over around bedtime, just be here while I put the kids down. Then I've got 1 hour for you between their bedtime and me passing out. you know? And so acknowledging what season your mentor's in. They might not have capacity to give you their undivided attention, but if you want to learn from them specifically, you might need to adapt. Again, taking them to dinner or coffee always shows that you want to give back to them and that you value their time. If it's a professional mentor, look up their rates. Book a half-day session with them to make sure they're a fit before you dive into their 6-month package, and do your due diligence in investing in them monetarily if that's appropriate, if that's not required, if it doesn't have to be a paid role. Just also, again, picking up their tab at lunch can go a long way. I think also when you do ask, acknowledging kind of the personality of your mentor and what they want. A lot of my mentors are really relational and abstract, so I don't need to come to my time with them with 3 questions boiled down. But sometimes you'll have a mentor that does want that. And if that's their preference, come to your dinner with your 3 questions and map them out beforehand. Give them a heads up of what you're going to be asking. If that is how they're wired, they're going to appreciate that, and they're going to want to show up for you with longevity versus being like, they don't know what they want. It's a waste of my time. This is not how I like to spend my time. You know, format the relationship in a way that lights you up and lights them up.
Yeah. So when you're like, are you actually asking someone, hey, will you be my mentor in that conversation?
I typically start with saying, hey, do you want to get coffee? I feel like putting a label on it early sometimes feels a little overwhelming. Now, I would say in really every relationship I've had, it started out more informal, and then I asked if we could meet more frequently. But I think Harriet might be the most relevant example for this. I remember being at a cookout and just saying, hey, can we meet regularly? Like for coffee, I'd love to grab coffee with you and maybe do this once a month. If you're able, it's on me. And she kind of was like, what? She didn't view herself as a mentor, but I think once we started meeting, it did become clear, like this is a fit. We both enjoy each other. We both look forward to this. I'm learning so much, but it's also casual conversation. I'm not coming with boiled down talking points to talk about. But then if she were a different personality, she might prefer the talking points. It just depends on the person. But I do tend to start casually, because you also might sit down at that coffee day and realize you don't want to meet regularly. You thought you did and you don't. And so easing in by keeping it casual at first, you don't want to be the girl on the date that talks about babies on the first date. So same with mentors. Don't come on too strong. Just keep it casual. I will add that caveat of sometimes in the professional sector, you don't want to be too casual. So you might need to map out your expectations earlier on and say, I am looking for a professional mentor. What are your rates? How can I make this a win for you? What can I do for you if rates aren't involved? Give back to them in some way. Every mentor I've had that I've paid, I've also been like, hey, do you need help with your Instagram? I'm a digital marketer. That's a sweet spot for me. Can I help you with that? When you give back more, they become more invested too. And they're like, wow, this is effortless for me versus a total drag to show up to,
Yeah, totally. And you said so many good nuggets of wisdom. I think the professional piece is true. Like whenever you're in a professional, if you're like reaching out to somebody who's a VP of a company, you better have a plan in place because they're busy.
Like they're not just trying to make new friends.
Yeah. And I think the other thing that's really interesting is you touched on like your mentor didn't think of herself as a mentor. And I think that's true. Like I would love to mentor some women, like on a personal level, not necessarily in the professional level, just because I've got some people that I'm already mentoring, but like, and we kind of do that almost for the whole company right now. But I would say even from a personal standpoint, I would love to mentor a woman, but like, I'm not going to go out to someone and be like, hey, do you need mentored? Right. So it's actually better for you as the mentee to approach somebody and say, hey, I know this is kind of awkward, but I'm really interested in getting to know you more. I think you have a lot of wisdom to share. And I would just love to learn from you. Would you be interested in like a monthly coffee date situation? No pressure if not. And like, I would just love to have just to meet you more often.
And I love that caveat where you said no pressure if not, because it can be over recognizing that when you're asking someone, they might say no. And not making it about you if they say no.
Right.
Just acknowledging maybe they're slammed. Maybe they have a sick family member that I don't even know about that's eating up every ounce of their time outside of their prior commitments. And so just acknowledging that some people are going to say no, it's uncomfortable, and giving them kind of an easy out if they need to say no, like, hey, no pressure if not, or I don't, you might have a ton going on in life and this might not be the right season.
It's just respecting people's time.
And if people feel not backed into a corner, they're more responsive, I think.
And they're more likely to say yes.
Yeah. Like, okay, I have an out, no pressure. This is not like I'm stuck in this forever type of thing.
Yeah. And I think it's one of those things too. And you can tell me your opinion on this around age, right? So like, do you recommend women to find people their own age, people younger than them? Because you can have mentors across the board in all different types. So what are your thoughts around that?
I am a firm believer that they do not have to be older than you. Although I like that. I tend to gravitate towards women who are older than me.
They're so wise.
They're so wise.
Yeah.
But really, they just need to have walked the road ahead of you in that area. So in your career, they might be younger than you, but more experienced.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you had a midlife career change and you're only 3 years in and you're learning from someone who's been in it 10 years, but is younger than you.
Right.
That happens. That's natural.
I work with a lot of women that are older than me. Yeah.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. And so I do not think they have to be older. I don't think that the mentor has to be older. They just need to be a few steps ahead, not a mile ahead, just a few steps ahead. Just saying, hey, I'll share what I know, and I'll pass it along to you. And you can turn around and pass it along to the girl a few steps behind you.
Yeah, that's good. Now, I'd love to hear who are some of your mentors? Like what types of mentors do you have? Mind sharing their names or like what you've learned from them? I'd love to hear a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So I'll start with Amber and Ann. I feel like they're most relevant to the conversation here. They are my career mentors. And man, they stepped into my life virtually at a time when I was about a year and a half into business, but like a year into being fully on my own, not having a backup plan job to
Yeah.
fall back just in case. And I was so scared. I had just bought a house. I was like, this cannot go south. Like I've got now, and really nervous. And I had never invested in my business beyond one e-course. And so I was so nervous. I invested in Amber's program from a cold Facebook ad, but I felt this peace, and I looked up her, and she had her kids in a lot of her pictures. And it just felt like she had built this business in a way that supported the lifestyle she wanted. And then Anne had been in the game for she had seen this online landscape change with every season and had weathered the changes. And she had this kind of calming presence. And I was like, man, these are my girls. And I really found them at the same time. I was not looking really intentionally for a mentor, but they both popped up at the same time, one in an email and Amber as a Facebook ad. And I was like, I think these are my girls. And so I joined each of their programs at the same time and also to serve them. I was running an Instagram agency at the time, and I was like, hey, beyond this, I'd love to give back to you. I'm happy to help you grow your Instagram and really focus on that presence, because that was when Instagram was really taking off and people were shifting from Facebook to Instagram. And so I looked at a service that I was skilled at and offered that to them as well. And I think that really solidified our relationship, because I knew I wasn't there just to take, but for it to be a mutually beneficial relationship. And if there's some things they know that they can pass along to me, that's what I'm here for. But if there's anything I know that I can pass along to them and it can be a win for them, why wouldn't I give that to them? And so now they've been in my life over 5 years. They have been with me in the mountaintop moments of my career, but also in the valley when I had to rebuild a business that went from $20,000 to zero, over $20,000 a month to zero overnight.
Wow.
And so because I had that relational capital with them too, where they'd walked with me as I built and scaled my business, they were also there when it fell apart and it was awful. And I was wondering if I was a 29-year-old peaker and am I going to be able to start over? What if it's all downhill from here? They were with me in those moments, and they've watched me rebuild over the last 2 years. And so I am just a fan of I think there are mentoring relationships that are short-term, and that is certainly purposeful. But my favorites are the long-term ones, because they can see how you've grown and evolved and changed and give you advice based on that, knowing a holistic approach to your life, not just one zeroed in part. And I just am forever grateful. I think my business doubled the first year I worked with them. And so
that's crazy.
Forever grateful.
Yeah, that's awesome. I know for me, I've been looking for the right business mentor. I know I've had ones for corporate careers. I've had a lot in my corporate life, but I haven't had one in my business that I have really trusted or been interested in. So we'll have to talk about that offline. But my personal ones have been so impactful. And it's so true. Like when I first moved to Nashville, I moved here and I knew 3 people. I didn't know a whole lot of people. I was kind of dating this guy. It was like a situationship, where you are dating him, but you're not really dating because he won't see you out in public. It was a whole mess. It was a very, very messy situation. And I remember going down the street here in Franklin to meet my friend. Her name's Christy McClellan. She's a biblical culturalist, is how she describes herself. But she was teaching a class and she's like, hold the phone. You need to meet my friend, Debbie. I feel like you would really get along with her. And Debbie's a lot older than me. She just turned 70 this year and I'm 31. And we're just good friends. I mean, now she helped me so much through that situation personally. She's walked me through a lot of singleness. She's helped me understand my relationship with the Lord. She's just been one of those people. So it's been so fun. I just got married this year, for her to kind of see that evolution of me moving to Nashville, being very single, really starting my business full time for the first time, and all the way seeing me through to now, I'm going on some retreat with her and some of her friends. It's my favorite thing. I'm she's so much older than me, but we relate on so many levels. She was my dream. I always wanted to have a Steel Magnolias mentor. And she is that. She has, I should bring her on the podcast to just talk about life, because she's so wise, but she said it was a Southern drawl and you're just yes, everything is so good. So anyways, I totally get what you're talking about when it comes to the mentors that have been with you for a really long time, can really make more of an impact probably than you realize. And I actually encourage women to, get somebody at whatever makes sense in terms of, especially in your career, if they've been doing it longer than you, hire them. It doesn't matter how old they are. But I think specifically for your personal life, I just really want to encourage women to find that older woman, because I think there's so much richness to cross-generational relationships that our world doesn't really talk about that much. One of my best friends, she always jokes that whenever I go and walk into a room, I always gravitate towards the babies, so the youngest people in the room or the oldest women in the room every single time. I never find the people my own age, because I feel like the women that are older have such wisdom that we don't really take advantage of as the millennial generation that we should. We should be taking advantage of their wisdom.
I agree. For someone to walk a road and then tell you the most full free way through, why wouldn't we want that wisdom? Like if I can avoid pain, like count me in. Like I want to take the most efficient route to the destination I'm going. And so I will always invite voices in to help me get there. And I also will still have to learn things the long, hard way myself. But if I can avoid learning the
hard way,
painful lessons on 50% of the life lessons because I've invited some voices into my life, what a win.
Yeah. And talk about this a little bit. I'd love to hear your thoughts about when are there too many voices? Because sometimes people, especially women, we want to hear everybody's opinion about all the things. And what's like a good amount of mentors to have if you have a number?
I don't have a number, but I tend to have like a few voices in my life at any given time. Like I have these 10 mentors in my book, but I'd say like day to day, I'm like probably interacting with a few of them a month. I more frequently interact with Anne and Amber because that's also my job. Like they are always a sounding board there for those kind of decisions. But I would say my life mentors, I may be interacting with one or two a month, but they're all always there.
Right.
And one of them might be able to give me specific advice on something if I just circle back with, hey, I know we haven't like caught up in a few months, but quick question, what do you think about this? They're all there. So I can't imagine having 10 coffee dates with all 10 of the women. That would probably be a little much. Like one or two is probably plenty, but I do love that they are all there. And I will say, on my mentorship journey, I'm a big fan. I wrote a book about it. I love mentorship, but there comes a point where you have to know yourself as well. And that has been my work really in the last 5 years is I maybe use other people's voices as a crutch.
I relate to that.
It feels safer, like you're making a smart, safe decision. But sometimes the work to do is learn how to trust yourself and to know from that inner knowing what the next right step is for you. And no one can have direction for your life better than you can. I mean, sometimes you invite these voices in and they do see things that will help you avoid the harder, journey. But at the end of the day, it's still your responsibility to discern what the best advice is for you. And so that is a big caveat. Like with mentorship also comes a responsibility to still be in tune with what you need. You can't outsource life decisions to other people.
I love that. That's so good. So let's talk about the book. So you wrote this book. Tell us a little bit about the book and who it's right for and where they can find it.
Yeah. So the book is my heartbeat. It's for the woman who is like, I'm craving someone to invest in me. I really, especially in the state of the world right now, we're isolated and lonely. We're more separate from each other than ever just because we have to stay inside, And I think people are just craving relational investment, especially that intergenerational relational investment that you were mentioning. Well, I think the appropriate word would be cross-generational. Inner might be within. Anyway,
we know what you were trying to say.
Grammatically speaking. But, I think people are just craving that relational investment. And you might be wondering, like, I have these kind of girls a few steps behind me in my life. Like, if I'm their mentor, what am I? Should I put a label on it?
Sure.
Do I have what it takes to be a mentor? The answer is yes. But I just wanted to write the book to demystify a mentoring relationship, whether that's asking and like, hey, your mentor is not going to be perfect. They're a human. They won't have all the answers in your life. And when you're the mentor, you don't have to have it all together. You don't have to have quote unquote arrived because, spoiler alert, we never really fully arrive. And I just wanted to normalize the process of finding and becoming a mentor.
Yeah.
So each chapter is a story with practical applications at the end of a specific mentor who taught me a lesson. So Linnell taught me what it looks like to love when it costs you something. And, Emily taught me about investing without a guaranteed return. Sometimes you don't see the fruit of investing in someone until 5-10 years down the road. Catherine taught me that you've got to do a lot of internal work to truly be free. And she was a mirror to lies I was believing about my identity in that season. And she helped me weed through them and replace that with truth about who I was. And so I write kind of this life lesson I learned from each mentor, specifically to illustrate that you can invite different voices into your life for specific lessons, and not one person is going to have it all figured out. By just inviting people to the table of your life, you are going to go further together. And so I love what my mentors have taught me, and I guarantee you, for those listening, that you have people that are probably already in your life who could teach you something beautiful as well.
I love that. So where can people find the book? Where would you recommend them go?
Anywhere books are sold, go to your local bookstore.
Yes, I'm for that too. Local bookstore.
Local bookstore, but it is at Barnes & Noble, Target, Amazon, all the places. And I'm so excited for this message to make its way out into the world.
Awesome. And where can people connect with you specifically? Where's the best place?
KelseyChapman.com and Kelsey Chapman on Instagram.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom around mentorship. I know that people are going to want to buy the book. I'm going to get the book and learn a little bit more about mentorship just in general and how to be thinking about it. So thank you so much for your time, Kelsey, and congrats on your book.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Bye-bye. Thanks for listening to the Recruit the Employer podcast. If you've been loving this podcast and it's been helping you approach your career in a brand new way, I have 2 shameless asks. Number 1, make sure you hit subscribe right this very second. That way you won't miss a single episode. And number 2, would you give us a review? Reviews help other ambitious career women like you know that this podcast is the place to be and helps the podcast climb to the top of the charts. Think of it as some good career karma. And as always, if you want to learn more about the topics we discussed today or are ready to take massive action and invest in yourself and your career, we would be honored to help you. Head on over to recruittheemployer.com/call to book your free strategy session. Regardless, we will see you next week.